In 2012, Major League Baseball introduced the brand new wild card game. This would be a one-game playoff, a winner-take-all, to determine the final playoff spot for each league. Was this done for the purpose of more money and revenue so that some bigger market teams could get more primetime coverage? Oh, yeah, absolutely. But the idea of a one-game sudden death match to open up the playoffs sounded like a good idea on paper. And let's just say, it has delivered some of the best games of both the playoffs for the respective years and some incredible moments that will go down in history. With the 2020 season, they even introduced the new expanded playoffs, which turned the wild card round into a best of three instead of just one game. With how many games it's provided us with, I thought to myself to rank every single one, all 24 to be exact, but because of how 2020 had 8 different series with multiple games, I just took the best game from each series, because most of those games were just one-sided blowouts. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more. Now let's begin. Number 24, NL 2014 Pirates vs. Giants. This one was pretty bland. It was a blowout win for the Giants, and Mad Bum dominated the Pirates. Not much else exciting happened. I mean, there was the Crawford Grand Slam, but it was a very lopsided affair. At least the Giants won the World Series that year. Number 23, AL 2020, Toronto vs. Tampa Bay, Game 2. Everyone expected the Rays to kick the Blue Jays' ass, and that's basically what happened. Hyunjin Ryu got shelled, and Hunter Renfroe blew it open with a grand slam. As bad as these games were for the Blue Jays, at least Danny Jansen had a good game. As lopsided as so many of the different 2020 series were, this one was easily the most. Number 22, AL 2018, Oakland vs. the Yankees. Just like the previous one, this game had almost nothing exciting happen, and you just knew the A's were going to get outmatched by the Yankees at every turn. Everything Oakland tried to do backfired as they were facing a team that was infinitely better at everything in terms of both pitching and hitting. Oakland bats were silenced, and their best pitchers got smacked around by the Bronx Bombers. This one only gets higher than Tampa, Toronto, and Pirates Giants because of how the crowd was in it the whole time, thus adding on with that infamous "We Want Boston" chant.
Number 21, AL 2013, Tampa Bay versus Cleveland. In this game, Cleveland kind of just died. Tampa had everything go in their favor en route to a shutout, but the fact that the Rays were even here was pretty impressive itself. You see, they had to play a tiebreak game against the Texas Rangers in order to see who would be facing Cleveland. Yet, the Rays managed to prevail over the Rangers and here against the Indians. It's pretty impressive that they managed to win 2 road games in both winner-go-home scenarios. That being said, this game itself was pretty forgettable, and it's only really ranked higher than the others because at least Cleveland was in it for most of the time.
Number 20, AL 2012, Baltimore vs. Texas. This one was actually the first wild card game, and it was wildly mediocre. It was cool that it was a thing being introduced, but the Orioles just had this the whole time. For a concept at the time, it was interesting considering the stakes that were for each team. The O's were a young and up-and-coming team, whereas the Rangers were old veterans trying to redeem themselves after 2 straight World Series losses. The early 2010 Rangers might be one of the biggest failures in sports in a long time, and this loss can just go right up there as why. Number 19, NL 2015, Cubs vs. Pirates. Here we have another shutout. This one at least had the epic couch rubber bomb in the Allegheny River. But aside from that, the Cubs dominated as Jake Arrieta effectively shut down the entire Pirates lineup. 3 straight wildcard games at home, and the Pirates only managed to win 1. They were all slow and painful deaths, and it blew my mind that the Pirates, despite having a pitching staff of Garrett Cole, Jay Happ, Charlie Morton, A.J. Burnett, and some young guy on the way named Tyler Glasnow, and they all still couldn't do anything. Number 18, NL 2020, Milwaukee vs. Los Angeles. People would be surprised that Milwaukee was a lot closer in this game than one would think. Yeah, they got swept like everyone expected them to, but the only reason they lost game 1 was just they didn't have a starter. Corbin Burns hadn't been injured, they'd have to do a bullpen game. Brent Suter probably doesn't start the game, and it's a lot closer, and Milwaukee has a better chance at winning. That being said, I still never understand how Orlando Arcia kills the Dodgers in the playoffs. But at least the Dodgers won this like they should have. Number 17, NL 2020, Miami versus the Cubs, Game 2. This one is only as high as it is because it's the Cubs losing and the Marlins winning. Seriously though, I don't understand how the Marlins own the Cubs in the playoffs. I knew before the series begun that the Marlins were easily going to win this because despite having won the division, the Cubs have been playing sub-500 ball since beginning the season 13-3. There might not have been fans to interfere, but I don't think any would have wanted to be there after this abysmal performance by the Cubs. Number 16, AL 2015, Houston versus the Yankees. You might have forgotten, but the ALCS in 2017 and 2019 weren't the first times these two teams met in the playoffs, and like those two series, the Astros showed the Yankees up. This time in Yankee Stadium. The legend of Colesby Erasmus was born. This was the first time the Astros team emerged, and also took place BCE, before cheating era. Number 15, AL 2019, Tampa Bay versus Oakland. Like a lot of others I've mentioned, this one involves the home team dying as the other team dances around. Here, it's once again Tampa Bay. They silenced the home crowd, but at least Oakland could fit 54,000 fans to watch the sad death of a team. It was a match of two teams with cheap owners and hardcore analytical-based managers, but only for the Rays did it actually work out. And Yandy Diaz just owns the Oakland Athletics. Number 14, NL 2013, Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh. The best part of this game was the infamous Cueto chant, but aside from that, there really wasn't much going for it. Just a lot of home runs and a roaring crowd of Yinzers. Pittsburgh had a long time coming in between this game and the last time they made the playoffs, so they earned this win. And they even had a great chance of beating the Cardinals in the NLDS, but they just fell apart. At least they were able to win one wild card game at home before being smacked around for the next two. Number 13, AL 2017, Minnesota versus the Yankees. The Yankees played essentially the same type of game in 2017 and 2018 wild cards, but this one's higher because at least the Twins were in it for quite some time. If thought 2019 sealed the deal and the Twins being the child of the Yankees, you can even go far back as this game to prove it. Now, granted, this was a Twins team that shouldn't have been anywhere near close to a playoff game with how weak the AL was that year, but at least they could get a participation award by being the small market team that gets kicked around by the infinitely superior team in the wild card game. Number 12, AL 2020, Houston versus Minnesota, Game 1. Speaking of the Twins losing in the playoffs, even if you put them against a team they should very easily defeat, like, say, a team with a sub 500 record that made it in the playoffs by default, they still do absolutely nothing. The Twins didn't just get swept by the Astros, they got humiliated. At least in Game 1, it was down to the wire and close until the ninth inning when the Astros broke through, but the Twins should have easily won not just this game, but the whole series. For an offense that was historic just a year prior, it's like an entire different team was out there. They even had the runner-up in the Cy Young, Kenta Maeda, and while he was solid and allowed only one run, they couldn't do anything against Zach Greinke in 2020. That being said, the Astros did play very well and took great advantage of all the mistakes Minnesota made, but that was a lot, and that's to the Twins' fault. Number 11, AL 2020, Chicago White Sox versus Oakland, Game 3. Hey, at least we finally have a wild card game where Oakland wins. But I would like to ask how in the world the White Sox managed to lose this series. Game 1, they cruised easily, and then Game 2, they almost took it but fell just short. Game 3, this was the only one between the whole series that wasn't super one-sided. That is until Oakland took the lead. It was back and forth in the first half, but the A's had them in the first half, not gonna lie. I lied. I actually think I know where the White Sox lost it at. His name is Rick Renteria and the paranoia of bullpen management. At least they have a good future ahead of them here in 2021. Number 10, NL 2020, Cincinnati versus Atlanta, Game 1.
But I think I think we're a nightmare.
The only thing that was a nightmare was Cincinnati's offense. Good God. This game was at least a fun pitcher's duel to watch between Max Fried and Trevor Bauer, but it showed exactly why the extra inning rule was actually a really stupid idea, because it was actually interesting to watch with no runner starting on second. All it was missing were fans and an offense from the Reds. Like, seriously, even though the Braves' offense was just as weak for 13 innings, at least they came through in the end and capitalized. Cincinnati did not. They didn't even have a single drive into deep left field for a home run. Only the Braves managed to do that, but not until Game 2. Number 9, NL 2012, St. Louis versus Atlanta. You want to talk about defining what the stakes are with this type of games? Look no further than the inaugural National League wild card. Not only was this game close throughout, but it had one of the most infamous calls in recent memory, the infield fly call. I remember how crazy it was watching it live and how mad fans were. You know fans don't throw stuff on the field unless the umpires are really fucked up, and boy did they. This game may not have been the first one, for it was actually technically the second, but in the first year of its existence, this showed why the change of formula to include the wildcard game was an amazing idea. And as we'll see with the next few games, how it brought some epic moments in baseball history. Number 8, NL 2020, St. Louis versus San Diego, Game 2. This is a great example of a back and forth slugfest. The Cardinals were a heavily mediocre team going against a powerhouse and hungry Padres squad, and yet the Cardinals almost swept this series, and honestly, they probably should have. This game was headlined by the great offense from both sides, with the Friars coming out on top while playing for their lives. Again, this is another example of 2020 games being not as exciting without any crowds to watch, because you just know Padres fans would have been roaring during this whole game. I had a lot of fun watching this, and I'd rank it higher, but there are two reasons I can't. One, by the time the Padres took the lead, it was pretty anticlimactic to end, and two, the announcers were pretty bland and boring. Aside from that, it was a great game to watch. Number 7, NL 2017, Colorado versus Arizona. This game felt like it's been forgotten, despite having still been fairly recent being in 2017. This game featured one thing: offensive explosions from both sides. Even though Arizona was in the lead for pretty much the whole thing, Colorado was never technically out of it. Granted, the Rockies really shouldn't have been there, similar to the Twins in the other league this year, but hey, at least it was a fun game to watch. Number 6, NL 2016, San Francisco versus the New York Mets. You want a wild card game with intensity? Try this one on for size. A pitcher's duel between playoff Mad Bum and Noah Syndergaard was everything it was advertised to be. Tied 0-0 in the ninth against the best closer of the year. You want to talk about a small-time player becoming legends in the playoffs when having their big moment? Do you know who Connor Gillespie is? No? Neither do I, but all of New York does. Top it all off with a Mad Bum finishing the job. This game was exciting because it came down to the very end. Did the three-run homer make it kind of obvious who would win? Yes, but it's the fact that it took all 9 innings for the scoreless tie to be broken, which is why I think this game is one of the best wild cards we've had. Number 5, AL 2016, Baltimore versus Toronto. We all know how this game ended, and we know the stupidity that led up to it. But for one moment, let's sit back and enjoy how good of a game this was. The AL East in 2016 was so loaded that the Yankees finished in 4th place and still had a record over 500. It was a season-long dogfight between the Red Sox, Orioles, and Blue Jays, with the Red Sox taking the division, which left Baltimore and Toronto to fight it out for the final spot. It was a thrill ride of a game. The main thing I noticed from this game was the atmosphere. Playoff crowds in the Rogers Center are some of the most loud and electric you'll see. And this crowd here was no exception. It's like they took right off from where they were after the great series between the Blue Jays and Rangers just last year. Walk-off home runs in the playoff are epic, and Edwin Encarnacion's home run wasn't just a bomb, but will go down as one of the most dramatic finishes in baseball history. Should Zach Britton have been put in the game? Yeah, probably, but he wasn't, and we'll never know about that what-if scenario.
Number 4, NL 2018, Colorado versus the Chicago Cubs. I find this game to be one of the more underrated games in recent memory. This one, like the playoff game between the Mets and the Giants, was a pitcher's duel through the whole 9 innings. Kyle Freeland and John Lester matched each other pitch for pitch, but it also seemed unlikely because of how the Rockies' pitching staff had always been really bad. Yet, the entire pitching staff, both from Kyle Freeland and the entire bullpen, was what was keeping in the game the entire time. You want an unlikely hero? How about Tony Walters, the third-string catcher who only entered the game because of 2 double switches? What's more amazing is that it felt like this game was being rigged for the Cubs to win. I mean, just look at this play. He was so obviously safe, but even after the review, he was still called out. The Rockies were the unlikely victors and earned this hard-fought victory.
Number 3, AL 2020, New York Yankees versus Cleveland. Now, this is a game I'm very disappointed couldn't have fans. This was a thrill ride from the start to finish, and every moment was exciting. One of the main reasons this game was so good was how it was a roller coaster and went back and forth between the Indians and Yankees the whole time. This game had everything: home runs all around, a go-ahead grand slam down by 3, and a ninth-inning comeback against one of the best closers that year. I always knew Cleveland was going to be a fringe playoff team before I had called them the Fringians the whole time, but I'd be lying if I told you that I was hoping Austin Hedges would launch a walk-off homer against Aroldis Chapman. No way in hell he was going to, but at least the best team won in the end. Number 2, NL 2019, Milwaukee versus Washington. Not even my Nats fan bias could put this any higher. I really wanted to put this at number 1, but after seeing how good the game number 1 was, I couldn't put this any higher than 2. I just want to start off by saying that not only would this be a biased pick because I'm a Nats fan, but I was actually at this game. See? There's me right there. I aged 10 years in 20 minutes, but my god, was it worth it. You can't appreciate this game, though, if you don't know the full story. Got a future Hall of Famer and a top 3 pitcher in the game in Max Scherzer gives up 3 runs early, and the offense is getting silenced by Milwaukee's strong bullpen. Brandon Woodruff, Drew Pomeranz, and Brent Suter all strong arms, but nothing when compared to the final challenge, Josh Hader, who is the best reliever in baseball. But with a lot of skill and a little bit of luck, they managed to do the improbable. Through the heartbreaking moments the team had suffered in the playoffs at home in winner-take-all games, when Victor Robles made the catch in center field, that's when we knew the 2019 team was just different. For how epic the playoff run was that year, it was here that it all started. I might have to do a full video on this game to truly express how much this game actually meant to me and all Nats fans alike. And now, number 1, AL 2014, Oakland versus Kansas City. I find it funny how the best wildcard game and the worst ones are both the ones from 2014. This game had everything you could ask for in a baseball game. One team was seeming to be the clear better team as the other was getting silenced in their home stadium. Yet the scrappy underdogs never gave up or gave in to the adversary they were against. Kansas City's style of play during this run in 2015 were simply keep the line moving and next man up. And they did just that in this game. Every time they were down, they came back. They were down 3 separate times, including in the 9th and 12th innings. This era of Royals teams are one of my favorites to look at because of just how different they are from the current way baseball is played. They won the game with small ball, getting hits like singles and doubles. 7 different players on the Royals had at least one stolen base. Of the 15 hits the Royals had this game, only 2 were extra base hits, and not a single one of those hits was a home run. The main reason Oakland lost is they let them get to their heads, and Derek Norris just sucked this game. Although the Royals didn't win the World Series this year, this team will forever remain as one of the greatest single-game comebacks to take place, given the atmosphere and intensity and what was at stake. The game had it all. It was high-scoring, back and forth, and topped off with a walk-off from a franchise cornerstone, which is exactly why it is what I think is the best wildcard game in MLB history.
Pass through into left field. The Kansas City Royals are walking